Hi, and welcome to Extreme Faith Reports with Uncle David. Today we have a very special program, and we pray that you might be blessed by getting to know all the great things that God is doing. And for that, we have Uncle David in our studio today. Welcome, Uncle David. Very special welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
How have you been, and what have you been doing?
Well, we've been usually traveling a lot and working in other countries. It's always nice to come back and to catch up on things. And this time we had a few weeks here, so that was really nice. Usually if you only spend a few days, you never catch up and you leave again. But this time God has helped us to do that. And at the same time, we were able to accomplish some things that have been on the burner for a while. About 3 or 4 months ago, when we were here last time, we were beginning a very strong push to reach and start projects in every single country of South America. That's been a dream of mine for many years. Mm-hmm. I was traveling in Africa and Asia and Europe, and I was thinking, things are moving forward here, but back at home in South America where I grew up, there's still a lot of countries that are just sitting there. And so I made, several years ago, I made a decision to be able to focus more on South America. The projects are mature and running in Europe and in Asia, and to try to start moving in. And I had 2 countries especially that were unreached. I won't say unreached as far as church work, but unreached as far as the medical work and media work and even certain areas of the country that were unreached, isolated areas, if they have jungle rivers or whatever. And one of them was Suriname, where they speak Dutch up north in the Inter-American Division, and the other one was in Uruguay. And that was down south in the South American Division. I'd been there when I was a child. The division headquarters used to be in Montevideo in Uruguay, but they moved to Brasilia years later. So we made a trip all the way. We flew from Bolivia all the way to Uruguay. And the Lord really blessed that trip. We met a lot of wonderful people, and we had an appointment with 2 small TV stations that were operating in smaller cities. They were for sale. And they said, we've been doing this for 19 years. We're not making any money. We just want to sell them. Oh. So we signed a purchase agreement, and already the funds are coming in to be able to buy those. And then we'll be starting our broadcast work in Uruguay already with 2 stations broadcasting, covering the city. We already are on cable. We already are on radio there for the majority of the day. But now we will have 24/7 in 2 cities in Uruguay.
Oh, praise the Lord.
And so it was a strange feeling landing in a little international airport. We landed, and it felt like I was landing in Illinois in the cornfields. It was just surrounded by soybeans and corn. And I landed, and I thought, am I in South America still? And after we landed, we taxied in and parked it. It just really felt like the U.S. And they were so nice. And in fact, it was a little air club that sold fuel, and they all came out and they wanted pictures. The first time we've ever had a U.S. airplane land here at our little international airport. And we're so happy. And they took pictures by the airplane. They helped push it around. And they said, you want to fill it up with fuel? I said, well, let's fill it up now. It's Friday afternoon, and we still have a few hours before sundown. And so they immediately pushed it around there. And I realized, I thought they would just pump. No, they were holding it in, and there was a guy going, pumping it with one of those wobble pumps, And they said, well, it's been here for 40 years this way. We haven't changed it. You still do it by hand.
Wow.
But they filled up the airplane for me, and Customs and Immigration stamped us in, and we just had really a wonderful time there. And then it was time for the flight home. It was almost 6.5-hour flight in the twin-engine plane, nonstop.
Wow.
And
Uncle David, when you said we landed, do you usually fly with Aunt Becky, or you fly by yourself? Could you tell us?
Well, we both are tired of traveling. We don't get a kick out of traveling anymore. We lost that a long time ago, but we really enjoy reaching people and reaching out. Aunt Becky is also directing the medical work in Bolivia, so we have physicians and dentists and physical therapists, nurses and others that help her with that work. But she's the coordinator, and so whenever I make a quick weekend trip or a week or less than 2 weeks, she stays at home. And she continues with her work, and I go and come. But whenever the trip is more than a month, long term, like right now, for example, we came up for 6 weeks. Then Aunt Becky came with me. I enjoy traveling with her, but at the same time, I know that it's rough on her if we make a quick trip and back, You sleep in a different bed, you eat different food, and it throws your rhythms off, and then she goes back and she has all this work piled up. So I try not to bother her too much, except that we go on a long trip.
Long trips,
yeah,
I see.
For more than a month.
And how do you basically get to finance all your trips and all your travels around the world?
Well, I have different ways that God provides. Many times we go on a trip and we don't know how the whole trip's going to be paid for. We just go. We just have enough to go, and then God provides along the way.
Okay.
That happens frequently. Other times, even though I try to do my best to try to figure out a little bit where it's going to come from, it's not always the case. Sometimes people offer to pay for my gasoline. Like this weekend, I went up to Pennsylvania and I spoke in the Seventh Adventist Church there in Pennsylvania in Reading, Hampton Heights, and they paid for all the fuel for the airplane. So that happens, and I'm really grateful when they can do that. When I say I don't charge anything, but there's travel expenses, and we never make it a requirement to somebody to pay for our travel expenses either. If we can go, we do it. And if they don't give us a penny, that's okay. We're still doing the work.
Right.
But most of the time, the people are generous and they try to help. And we really are grateful for that because it stretches the money a little bit.
Definitely.
And in some cases, I have a friend, for example, that gave me a credit card and said, you can have so much money on this card every month, and you can use up to this. So sometimes I'm able to buy gasoline with that card, and when it runs out, I go, I got to find another way to pay for the gasoline. But God has provided faithfully along the way, and we tried to go with the most efficient, economic airplanes as well. For example, the twin-engine plane that I'm flying now is a Twin Comanche. I flew one for 24 years, and it's one of the, absolutely hands down, one of the most efficient, long-range, small twin airplanes.
Okay.
But then a physician from the West Coast donated to us a bigger pressurized airplane. Put new engines on it, put new radios in it. It's delicious, really.
Wow.
And I said, well, I don't need two airplanes, so I donated my Twin Comanche that I flew to the Philippines, and they're doing a wonderful job in the Philippines. The Philippines have 8,000 islands approximately. And, a twin-engine, long-range airplane, just what they need to go from north to south, pick up patients, move people.
Praise the Lord.
And so, we've had 2 helicopters operating. I think they're in the process of, they got rid of one already, the older one, and they're getting another new one. So they have 2 modern helicopters, but we need more. We need up to 5 helicopters in the Philippines to reach into the different mountain areas. But I started flying the big airplane. When a plane is full and we have a good cargo or people, it pays for itself. It's like taking a bus full of people. If the bus is full, no problem.
Right.
But if you don't have a full bus full of people, you don't want to take the bus down 3 blocks to buy a loaf of bread.
Right.
It's a little bit of a pain to drive a bus 3 blocks to get some bread. So you end up walking. So I found out real fast that this big plane is a very nice, comfortable airplane if it's full. You can afford it. But you can't afford to fly it if it's just a couple of you.
Right.
So I started missing my Twin Comanche again, and I was almost repenting, giving it up.
You sold it.
But I decided to write a letter, and the letter I wrote to the owners of the airplanes explained what we did, Twin Comanches, and I said, would you if you're not going to use your airplane, or if you would consider donating it to this work, medical work and Bible work and so on. And you know what? We ended up getting 2 Twin Comanches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so the Lord was very good to us. One of them is now flying in Mexico and Central America, and the other one I fly regularly. And so those are the most efficient small planes, so we can carry a lot, carry a little bit, and still do it rather cheaply. So the funding comes as we go along, but we do our best to squeeze and be very efficient with the money.
That's right. And how do you see future plans? I know God has been blessing. We see signs that Jesus is about to come back. How do you see yourself, or what are the projects for GMI?
Well, backing up just a little bit, just before we get into the future plans, in Suriname, I want to tell you about Suriname first. I mentioned Uruguay and Suriname were 2 of the goals for this year.
Right.
And so Uruguay is now moving forward nicely. Suriname is also a small country on the north coast of South America, right next to Guyana, where I worked for so many years. And I got a call from the mission president, and he said, Elder Gates, I've been watching you for a long time working in Guyana, and we're rather jealous that you have so many airplanes and so much work going in Guyana, and here we're next door, and we don't have anything. And so would you be able to come over here? I said, I'm embarrassed that I didn't call you first, that you had to call me, but actually it's an answer to prayer. I've been dreaming about going there and working with you. So the mission president picked me up at the airport, and we went to talk to civil aviation, to the government. We went to discuss with some media people as well. And at present, we're getting ready. I have to go there in a few weeks to Suriname. He called me back again. But things are going forward very well to cover the capital city with Dutch television. They speak Dutch. They also speak a dialect called Taki-Taki.
Taki-Taki.
Taki-Taki. It's kind of a mixture of Spanish, Portuguese, and Dutch and English. But it's definitely a dialect. And so we need something to a station that can present their programs in Dutch, and a little bit of English is okay. A little bit of local productions in Taki-Taki it will work fine. But we happen to have a Dutch television network. All the work we did in Europe, we have 11 television networks in Europe in different languages. One of them is Dutch, and so this is a perfect timing so that we can take our Dutch signal and Dutch materials and take them to Suriname and begin broadcasting in Dutch. And then we'll begin our local productions in Taki-Taki there as well. And so the mission president was very, very happy that I came. I've been back several times. I got to go back again. And we have a wonderful work in the Caribbean Union and in the Suriname is part of the Caribbean Union, and I worked there for years and have very, very good friends. And in the union, some of the treasurers on our board as well for Guyana, since he's Guyanese. And we studied together, did our graduate work together with Andrews University. And so I got a lot of friends, and I just love working together with the church. Some parts of the world are not as open, other parts are very open, and we work any way we can. If we work together, that's always the best way. Option A, plan A is always work together. And in plan B as well, if nobody else wants to go along, then I go by myself.
That's right.
And plan B. So somebody has to go. This morning we had a visiting speaker today, a pastor that came in this morning and gave us worship, and he talked to us afterward and he said, the most important part is to do. Too many people are talking and talking and talking, and the devil just tries to distract us and get us involved in doing other things. But the most important part is doing. Because once you do, then things happen, and God starts moving things. And I've discovered that even though I hadn't considered it exactly the same way he did, it's exactly the same principle. The devil will do anything to keep you sitting still, not active, sitting on the pew, involved in your personal affairs and the cares of this life, like Jesus says. But Jesus said, beware, lest the cares of this life occupy you so much that you let the spiritual part slide. So we have, in Gospel Ministries International, we're about doing. People are working, they're going, they're broadcasting, they're flying, they're preaching, they're healing.
They're cooking.
They're cooking, they're cutting the grass, they're planting the farms, they're welding cars, but it's all about doing. And so I would encourage people to be thinking about what God wants them to do, but do something. Doing is a very important part, and don't get distracted by the little things. And so Suriname is going forward. Uruguay is going forward. I have to say that Brazil is the biggest country in South America, and things are going very well in Brazil.
Praise the Lord.
In the Amazon basin, also with the media network. And I got to tell you about our radio station in Manaus. And I got there, we bought an air base, a property on the river, and we were getting ready to set up our airplanes to operate there. And somebody called me and said, there's a radio station for sale. Are you interested? Well, that's not the reason I came here, but I'm always interested in media. There's 2 million people that live in Manaus, out in the jungles. And there's nothing like the joy of putting God's music and God's messages into their homes, be it radio or television. So I said, yes, let's have lunch together. So we had lunch together, and they told me, well, it's not a lot of money. It's only $75,000. I was expecting $500,000. But I said, why cheap? He said, well, we've been broadcasting for 2 years, but all the paperwork's not finished yet. We just did it, and we're doing the paperwork, and it takes a lot of work. And here, it's very difficult to get a license. It's very political, and if you don't have a lot of money, or if you don't know a congressman, or you don't know somebody who will help you, it's just so painful. So we decided to sell it, and we're going work with another station. Now we have 2 stations. So I said, can you give me a month? Nope, I'll give you 1 week.
Just 1 week.
Just 1 week, and there's 4 people who are interested in buying. So I was on my way to Europe, and I stopped by Panama on the way connecting through, and I called a friend of mine in Brazil, and I said, you've helped us with some other projects. Would you be interested in helping us somehow to get a radio station? And he said, how much? And I told him. He goes, oh, that's pretty cheap for a radio station. I said, well, it's very cheap, but the paperwork isn't finished yet. But at least it's on the air. And he said, I'll pay for all of it.
Oh, wow.
And so the very next week, we were already on the air broadcasting 24/7. So we took the audio off of our TV station and put it on initially. Then we started up a different radio station, and we could tell it, man, you know, most Christian stations have rock music and heavy music that a lot of evangelical churches like to play, and even the Adventist church plays some of that heavy music, and I believe that's not the wisest thing. I believe that God wants us to have sacred music, no worldly rhythms, no worldly pop music or anything, which we do sometimes in other stations, and so we always broadcast 100% hymns.
Okay.
Sometimes they're sung, sometimes they're instrumental. So we started with that, and we didn't have very much to get started with, but the reaction was immediate. We have a young man who volunteered to work in the evening, and he would have a call-in program. He started getting 5,000 text messages a night.
Wow.
They said, I'm Jehovah's Witness. I just love the music. It's the best music in town. I'm Mormon. I'm Catholic. I'm evangelical. I'm Adventist. Whatever it is, man, it was just an immediate response. And we were just working out of a tiny little office, but we were so thrilled with the response. Then we got some messages coming on regularly, but we were careful not to do too much because the paperwork wasn't in order, you see.
Right.
Well, we operated for about 2 years that way, and we never got the paperwork in order yet. And finally then we got word, you better turn the radio station off. They might take away your equipment. You don't have your papers in order. And we were kind of scared. I said, you know what, Lord? I know that you want us to get everything in order. I know you want us to do it, but we haven't known how to do it. Please help me. And we were praying on our board meeting, we were praying, and an idea came to me. Call your friend at the capital city in Brasilia. He knows about media. Ask him to help you. So I called him right then. As soon as we finished praying, I called him. He says, actually, let me see. There's actually an educational license available in Manaus right now. We could apply for that. We don't know if you'll get it, but you qualify. You're a nonprofit. And so he applied for it. The director of our television network said, no, it's a lot of money. We'll spend a lot of money. We won't get anything. Well, I know, but we don't have anything. We have nothing to lose except money. and you can't get anything for free, so you might as well be willing to risk it.
Right.
You know, so we went forward. I paid him a deposit, and he started working on it. Well, guess what? Last week, the director from our television network in Brazil happened to be up here in the U.S. He came to my office, and he said, guess what? We got the license.
Wow, praise the Lord.
So now we have a permanent license that allows us to continue broadcasting, and would have cost 4 or 5 times more money if we'd had to buy it already finished. But we bought it cheap. We started broadcasting. We took a big risk. People say, you're a risk taker. Absolutely. That's it. Whenever God opens the door, I always go in. And what if it's not finished? What if it's undefined? What if exactly, that's risk.
Exactly.
So we seize every opportunity. GMI is all about seizing opportunities. And so I'm just so grateful that God did that for us.
Amen. Praise God.
Yeah.
Pastor Gates, we have heard that throughout your life, you've taken a lot of risks. Does it get easier? Are you more able to recognize an opportunity and just accept it right away? Does it get easier with the time to trust the Lord?
Actually, the work gets harder and the risks get stronger. So It doesn't get easier. But it doesn't get worse. In other words, I'm just as uncomfortable today as I was when I started 20 years ago. It's just that my risks are bigger.
Right.
So my comfort zone is not this big now. I can work with this now instead of this.
Right.
And so God keeps raising the weights. Like, does it hurt to raise a weight? Yeah, well, first it hurt to raise 20 pounds. Now I got to raise 50 pounds. You know what I mean? And so the weights get bigger. The responsibilities get greater. And to a certain extent, but I'm also, I sleep well at night. I don't carry problems to bed. I turn them over to the Lord, and in the morning I turn them the whole day to Him. And so there could be life-threatening situations to a project. I got a call yesterday from a person from Europe. unrelated to one of our projects, but a friend of mine, and he says, our whole project is at risk. We might lose everything. I said, well, in the last couple of years, I've been there twice, and it looked like we were going to lose everything in South America, and it looked for a while that we were going to lose everything at GMI, and it looked very gloomy. And I said, I'm not going to be gloomy. If God draws a hedge around us, then nothing can happen. Mm-hmm. And since God is responsible for the funding, it was financial needs. We had very desperate financial needs. And we said, God's ultimately responsible. So we decided not to be discouraged. I chose for me not to be discouraged. And of course, I kind of set the tone, because if I'm positive and optimistic and everybody sees me happy, mm-hmm. it tends to reflect. But if you walk around gloomy, everything is bad, we might lose everything, might close down, and the whole spirit, Right. So I chose to be happy, and even if it closes down, we had 20 great years. Mm-hmm. We're working in 93 countries now, and very soon we're adding 2 or 3 more countries, and almost every year we go to between 2 and 4 countries, new countries.
Wow.
And so I said, even if we were finished, you know what, I don't mind stopping. If the Lord wants me to stop, I really could use a rest. I'm tired, and I'm happy with my work, but I really would like to stop traveling so much. Mm-hmm. But if the Lord says stop, I'll go, yes, sir.
Right.
I guess I did my work now. Mm-hmm. But the answer is God is not wanting us to slow down, and I've noticed He has a hedge around us, and problems can only come so close, and they stop. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, what? I just noticed that nothing can stop it. It's like even a life-threatening situation that can close down a ministry only gets so far, and that's as far as it goes. So I've come to the conclusion that God has a work that needs to be done for His people, and if they will do that, then God will draw a hedge around them like He did Job, and they will be able to accomplish the task.
Praise the Lord. So your secret would be to every day just rely totally on the Lord and
leave it in His hands.
And
if it looks like it's going to collapse, let it collapse. It's okay for it to collapse if your work is over.
Right.
We shouldn't artificially create situations where we cause a collapse, but if you keep trusting the Lord and you're doing your best to follow His instructions, it's His responsibility.
Right. Okay, a lot of people also wonder, how did you accept speaking appointments? How do you handle the fact that a lot of people would like to hear you preach, but at the same time you have a work to do and you're traveling most of the time? For
10 years, I used to be in a different country almost every week. And I'd look at my schedule and have almost 2 years, solid appointments every week. Mm-hmm. And yet I had dreamed of doing this and I dreamed of doing that, and I couldn't figure out how to do it because I didn't have any time. Mm-hmm. So I came to a conclusion that I can preach to the choir. I do preach to the choir. I focus mainly on the church. Mm-hmm. But as I focus mainly on the church, I try to wake them up to the reality that time is almost over. If we don't wake up and get ready now and get oil in our lamps and depend on the Lord now, the Sunday law is coming right down the pike. It already, the Catholics are ready. The U.S. government's ready. The people of North America are insisting on that day. It's just God's mercy that it hasn't happened yet. But once that Sunday law happens, it'll be too late to get ready. Most of God's people will wake up and decide, oh, I better get ready. Sorry.
It's too late.
It's closing time. Mm-hmm. The Sunday law is not preparation time. It is the final exam. And you wait till the final exam to study, there's no studying anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I do speak to churches, but I have my burden is to reach those that have never heard before. So I'm putting in TV stations and medical work and airplanes and medical launches in schools all around the world. And I have other missionaries that are doing the same, and it's just growing, it's building speed. There's a lot of young people that want to work for the Lord. There are thousands of them. And we want to create opportunities where people can come and serve the Lord. And we have applications every day from volunteers, professionals, young people, mature people, retired people, mainly young people that want to serve. I just got a call from Spain yesterday. A whole family is coming to the Canary Islands, wants to come and work in South America. And then there's a French family that in France that's interested in coming to work. And we need French families to do recording for our French network. Mm-hmm. And so all of this is happening, and it's very, very important that I not accept speaking appointments just because somebody invites me, because they would tie me up. So I only accept speaking appointments whenever I am in a certain place. For example, they call me from the U.S. and say, can you come to our church? I said, let me see. you know what, I will be in the U.S. during those months or during those weeks. I will accept the appointment. But you know what, I don't know where I'm going to be, so I'm going to go ahead and not accept her. And if you'll just keep in touch with reception and keep in touch every month, as soon as I'm in the States, she will let you know, and then we can schedule an appointment. That way, I'm not running like a chicken with my head cut off all over the world, but I'm following my main goal. And at the same time, if I'm in a place, of course I'm happy to speak.
Right.
So maybe I should say a few words to our viewers, especially. I'd like to maybe address some of you. You're wondering what God wants from you. What God mostly is looking for is people willing to dedicate themselves totally to Him. Whatever He says, to take orders. Today we take orders from man. Our job, our bosses, our family needs all force us into situations. But God is looking for people who are willing to say, Lord, here am I, send me. And we need to learn to start obeying divine directions. And wherever and whatever God says, that's what we do. And if we learn to do that, it will be like getting oil in your lamp, to depend totally on the Lord. You may have to quit your job. I had 2 pastors call me last week and said, we've been working in our job. We have 5 churches or 2 churches, and we want to be free to go all over the world anytime God calls us and to preach. And I said, to do that, you have to be a volunteer. You can't take a salary and tell your boss, I'm going to be gone for the next month.
Right.
You can't do that. So you have to be willing to trust the Lord. And so if you are willing to do that, or God gives you something on your heart that He wants you to do, whether you're a pastor, a carpenter, a mechanic, whether you're a doctor, nurse, whatever you are, if God lays something on your heart, it is time to start following God's calling and to keep your ears to the ground, like we do with a train rail. You can hear the train coming. Keep your ears listening to God, and He will lead and guide you. Time is very, very short. Probation is almost closed for Seventh-day Adventists, and the door will close for God's remnant people while it is yet remains open for those who have not heard. So please, don't waste time. Turn yourself over to God. There's plenty of work to do. Work is everywhere. Don't get distracted on minor things. Focus on the main priorities in your life, the spiritual life. Learn to work together as a team. Learn to work together with others that have different points of view than you do, but that you can work together in the same direction. And not everybody will agree with you. In fact, you may have to walk by yourself. But you'll find that God will send you help. And plan A, go together. Plan B, go by yourself. But go and do. And so therefore, I want to encourage you to do that. And as we're doing the same thing, Emily, here in Gospel Ministries International in the offices, we want to encourage others to also. We have room for others. We have room, a lot of opportunities. Call our office at 423-473-1841. And you can talk to the receptionist, or you can apply online at www.gmivolunteers.org. And you can find a place for you. If you don't know, there's plenty of work to do. But if you don't know where, you just have an idea God is telling you, contact us or apply online. And Emily, there's work to do everywhere in the world. And there's some can work here, some can go overseas, and there's unlimited amounts to do. And the time is short to do a great work.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Uncle David, and thank you for joining us in Extreme's Faith Report. And until we meet again, may God bless you and put yourself in His hands so that He can use you to finish this work. May God bless you.